What if a single Apache helicopter, the warhorse of the U.S. Army, suddenly found itself at the center of a geopolitical storm in the Caribbean? On its own, the Apache is more than a helicopter. It's a legend. From the deserts of Iraq to the mountains of Afghanistan, it has become the symbol of America's reach, precision, and sheer firepower. But now imagine this same machine of war operating in skies where it ISL. Just Venezuelan forces it might face, but the shadow of Moscow and the silent backing of Beijing. Could one helicopter, no matter how advanced, still be invincible? Or is this where politics, alliances, and numbers begin to challenge even America's icons? The Apache AH-64 has been the pride of U.S. rotary aviation for decades. With its Hellfire missiles, Hydra rockets, and 30mm chain gun, it can level tanks, smash bunkers, and provide close air support day and night. It flies with modernized sensors like the longbow radar, allowing it to detect and engage multiple targets at once. In the Middle East, insurgents and even armored columns have learned to fear the mere sound of its rotors approaching. But here's where the tension builds. The Caribbean is not Iraq. Venezuela is not Afghanistan. And if whispers of an emerging three-way alignment, Russia, China, and Venezuela are true, then the Apache may be flying into an entirely new type of battlefield. Let's begin with Moscow. Russia has long courted Caracas, providing not just rhetoric but hardware. In the past 2 decades, Venezuela has taken delivery of Su-3 OMK-2 fighters, S-300 surface-to-air missile systems, and even the occasional deployment of Russian bombers. Beyond the shipments, there have been reports of Russian military advisors on Venezuelan soil, providing training and support. In 2019, Russian Tu-160 bombers made headlines by landing in Caracas, a dramatic reminder that Moscow considers Venezuela within its sphere of influence, even if half a world away. Now imagine if that relationship deepens. A handful of Russian MiG-31s or air defense specialists working side by side with Venezuelan crews. Would an Apache still roam freely over the jungles and coastlines? Or would its confidence be checked by the knowledge that a Russian radar might be tracking it? Then comes Beijing. China's role is less about fighter jets and more about economics, but never underestimate economics in shaping strategy. Venezuela's oil is a lifeline for China, fueling its energy-hungry economy and diversifying its supply away from the Middle East. In exchange, China has built infrastructure, provided loans, and quietly shipped technology. Chinese tankers docking in Caracas are not just commercial transactions, they are strategic statements. And with them often come whispers of dual-use equipment, long-range radar, drones, and perhaps the occasional military advisor. Beijing might not be flying combat aircraft over Caracas, but what if it quietly provided Venezuela with swarms of cheap drones, surveillance satellites, or electronic warfare systems? Wouldn't that alter the balance, at least enough to complicate U.S. operations? Now we return to the Apache. Imagine it hovering low, preparing to launch a Hellfire against a Venezuelan armored column. Suddenly, instead of old, poorly maintained defenses, it faces a mixed network. Russian-built Pantsir systems, Chinese-made jamming gear, and Venezuelan operators using guerrilla-style tactics. The Apache is still deadly, there's no question. But the question becomes, can it survive in an air defense environment layered with more than just Venezuela's resources? This leads to the hypothetical scenario of a triple axis. The United States, pressuring Venezuela after a confrontation at sea, deploys Apaches to nearby bases or even from amphibious assault ships offshore. Venezuela, under duress, quietly activates Russian-trained air defense units. Meanwhile, Chinese-supplied drones begin flying reconnaissance over the coast, feeding targeting data back to Caracas. It is not an overt alliance. No Russian or Chinese flags fly in battle, but their fingerprints are all over the engagement. Could the United States still operate as freely as it did in Iraq or Afghanistan? Or would every sortie now come with the risk of ambush, electronic jamming, or international escalation? The strength of America's military has always been its ability to project power across the globe with overwhelming dominance. But here lies the uncomfortable question. Does overwhelming dominance still mean the same thing in 2025? The Apache itself, for all its upgrades, is a design from the late Cold War. Yes, it has new avionics, better night vision sensors, and advanced munitions. But is it prepared for a world of drone swarms, artificial intelligence-assisted targeting, and hypersonic missiles lurking over the horizon? Some would argue that America's reliance on proven platforms like the Apache demonstrates wisdom. Why reinvent the wheel when you already own the best? Others caution that overconfidence could lead to vulnerability. After all, history is littered with examples of invincible weapons being outmaneuvered by new technology. And yet, there is also the matter of scale. The United States doesn't just field Apaches, it fields networks. Carrier strike groups, AWACS surveillance aircraft, satellite constellations, and allied bases all feed into the same picture. Venezuela may have Russian jets, Chinese tankers, and local militias, but it cannot match the global reach of America. In a prolonged fight, the Apache is not alone. It is the tip of a spear carried by the world's most sophisticated military machine. Which raises another provocative thought. Is the Apache itself the real weapon, or is it the symbol, the forward edge of a much larger system? Still, even the strongest system faces trade-offs. Deploying Apaches and strike groups to the Caribbean costs billions. Sustaining them in hostile political environments risks diplomatic fallout. And each escalation opens doors for Moscow and Beijing to exploit use overreach. Here's the paradox. The United States can win almost any battle, but can it win the political war that follows? In Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the battlefield victories were clear. The strategic outcomes less so. Could a standoff in Venezuela become another such test? Let's play out a three-phase hypothetical. Phase 1. The United States escalates after a maritime clash, moving Apaches into theater. Phase 2. Venezuela activates its Russian-trained defenses, while Chinese tankers deliver supplies and drones. Apache sorties succeed, but losses begin to mount, not catastrophic, but enough to raise eyebrows back home. Phase 3. The battle stretches into weeks. Russia and China avoid direct involvement, but continue to supply intelligence and gear. Now Washington faces a dilemma. Does it double down, risking a drawn-out conflict in America's backyard, or scale back, conceding that the cost outweighs the benefits? In such a scenario, the Apache remains lethal, but it is no longer the untouchable predator it once was. It becomes a piece in a larger chess match, vulnerable not because of its design, but because of the alliances and strategies arrayed against it. That tension, that uncertainty, is what makes this hypothetical so gripping. So where does this leave us? On paper, the Apache would devastate Venezuelan forces, even with outside help. Its firepower, survivability, and integration into U.S. networks remain unmatched. But when you add the what-ifs, Russian radar, Chinese drones, Venezuelan militias, the picture becomes less certain. Is that enough to stop the Apache? Probably not. Is it enough to slow it down, to raise costs, to sow doubt? Absolutely. And in modern warfare, sometimes doubt is as dangerous as defeat.